História da mais mortal das armas criadas pelo homem, a bomba atômica. Em duas partes e com imagens inéditas, Trinity e Além narra a trajetória da bomba, desde o início, em 45, até a assinatura do primeiro tratado de limitação dos testes nucleares, em 63. O documentário é narrado pelo ator William Shatner, o Capitão Kirk da série Jornada nas Estrelas. E a música original é interpretada pela Orquestra Sinfônica de Moscou. Assista agora a primeira parte de Trinity e Além.
May 1945. The hot New Mexico desert seemed far from the ravages of war in Europe. "100 tons of TNT, a rehearsal to scale and calibrate the power of an untested atomic weapon. "2 months from this day, man would unleash the destructive power of a demon locked within the very fabric of matter and plunge the world into the atomic age." For the next 20 years, testing the power of the atomic bomb would hold the world captive by events shrouded in secrecy. Events set into motion 7 years earlier.
March 1938. Hitler invades Austria. The Third Reich begins to flex its military muscle. Later that year, German scientists discover fission of the uranium nucleus, bringing the Third Reich one step closer to discovering the secret of the atomic bomb. Fear of German research stimulated activity in the United States and England. Fear that German scientists could produce weapons of great devastation. In the fall of 1939, Dr. Albert Einstein wrote his now famous letter to President Roosevelt, explaining the urgency of work on uranium fission. Roosevelt, a man of action, moved swiftly. An advisory committee on uranium was appointed. German forces invade Poland, plunging the nations of Europe into a Second World War. A new branch of the Army's Corps of Engineers was established to administer work on military uses of uranium. Major General Leslie R. Groves, the man responsible for the Pentagon, was placed in charge of the project. On December 10th, the first self-sustaining chain-reacting pile was successfully operated by Enrico Fermi. Fermi's success brought intense efforts between government and the private sector, creating huge industries for uranium separation in the town of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and for the production of plutonium in Hanford, Washington, at the shores of the mighty Columbia River. This tremendous effort forged the materials necessary for creating an atomic bomb. The first atomic bomb was assembled at Los Alamos, a secret laboratory in New Mexico. When Dr. J.R. Oppenheimer arrived to take charge, he began to surround himself with a galaxy of outstanding scientific stars. From Los Alamos came the bomb design and treatment of many theoretical problems. Yet many questions still remain unanswered. What are the secrets of this new source of power and destruction? Knowledge and information on all aspects of this new weapon are essential and can only be discovered by further testing.
I had a very good friend, a Hungarian, 10 years older than I, Piocilat. He had a very independent mind and a great feeling what is coming. He saw years ahead that nuclear explosives would become important. He was a friend, and I helped him. For instance, I drove him to an important interview with Einstein, where Einstein wrote the famous letter to Roosevelt that started things going. I myself was interested in theoretical physics, in explaining atoms, molecular vibrations, knowledge, and more knowledge. I didn't want to. But then, Hitler not only swallowed up half of Poland, he invaded the West. And 2 days later, there was an invitation to a Pan-American Congress, where Roosevelt, whom I have never seen before, was going to speak. And he made a remarkable speech, how the world is really endangered by Hitler. Among other things, and at the climax, he said, you scientists are blamed for the weapons to be used. But I tell you that if you now won't work on weapons, the freedom of the world will be lost. Now, you know, I had the feeling that Roosevelt was talking to me. I was there when the letter was signed that awoke his interest in nuclear energy. I thought I knew he was talking about nuclear energy. Of the 2,000 scientists there, I felt he was talking to me. Of course, not true. But in that 20-minute talk, my mind was made up. I continue to like better to work on pure science. But this had to be done. And as long as it had to be done, and I could contribute, I did, and was never sorry for having done it.
The uranium gun weapon, or little boy bomb, was a simple design, and scientists were confident it would work without testing. The Fat Man, or implosion bomb, was a more efficient design, using plutonium instead of uranium. Inside the very center of the bomb was an initiator, surrounded by a sphere of plutonium. This sphere was encased within a set of symmetrically located, high-explosive lenses, creating an implosion which forced the plutonium into itself, attaining critical mass. The blast instantly raised temperatures to 10 million degrees, releasing a force of 1 million pounds of pressure, vaporizing the tower, and all desert life within a half a mile. The intensity of light was sufficient to cause temporary blindness to an observer 10 miles away. With a yield 200 times greater than the 100-ton test, the fireball created a crater nearly 1/2 mile across and fused the desert sand into a green glass still containing traces of radioactivity 50 years later.
Pearl Harbor plunged the United States into war. For 3 years, gathering momentum with each small victory, our forces had conducted an offensive against the war-bloated empire of the rising sun. Slowly, island by island, mile by mile, and then with ever-quickening sweep, the combined land, sea, and air forces of the Allies drove against the borders of that empire, forcing it back until late in 1945, only the bastions of the Japanese home islands remained to be stormed. Ahead lay the greatest campaign of all, invasion of the Japanese homeland, and close-in, desperate fighting. That this fanatical enemy would not quit until her last fighting man had been driven from his cave and killed had been established time and again by bitter experience.
The uranium gun weapon, or little boy bomb, was detonated over Hiroshima at an altitude of 1,800 feet, the height to achieve maximum blast effect. 3 days later, the Fat Man implosion bomb was detonated over Nagasaki. In Hiroshima, 70,000 people were killed or listed as missing. Of its 90,000 buildings, over 60,000 were demolished. The implosion bomb dropped on Nagasaki took the lives of 42,000 people and injured 40,000 more. It destroyed 39% of all the buildings in the city. With a yield of 20 kilotons, similar to that of Trinity, this weapon would be considered a nominal atomic bomb and provide a blueprint for all future nuclear weapons.
But the principal targets are naval ships. We are seeking primarily to learn what types of ships, tactical formations, and strategic disposition of our own naval forces will best survive attacks by atomic weapons should we ever have to face them.
"11 months after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Operation Crossroads was conducted at Bikini Atoll, 2,500 miles west of Hawaii. The purpose of Crossroads was to test the effects of atomic weapons using two devices, similar in design to Trinity and Nagasaki, codenamed Able and Baker. Shot Able was to be dropped from a B-29, while Shot Baker would be detonated 90 feet below the surface of the water. The target armada consisted of 185 Japanese, German, and American ships, ranging from small amphibious craft to battleships and aircraft carriers.
The bomb will not start a chain reaction in the water, converting it all to gas and letting all the ships on all the oceans drop down to the bottom. It will not blow out the bottom of the sea and let all the water run down the hole. It will not destroy gravity. I am not an atomic playboy, as one of my critics labeled me, exploding these bombs to satisfy my personal whims.
Animals, plant life, even biological warfare agents were assembled to study the effects of heat, blast, and radiation. The bomb missed its intended target by nearly 800 yards. The blast sent 5 ships, including 2 destroyers, to the bottom of Bikini Lagoon. All ships within a half a mile of the blast were heavily damaged. But damage was nowhere near that created by the following underwater blast, known as Shot Baker.
Bikini Baker was an underwater burst of the same device, and it produced much more damage to the armada of 70 ships. For instance, the USS Saratoga had the bottom of it essentially knocked out of it from the underwater burst. And the Saratoga sank and sets upright in the bottom of the Bikini Lagoon at the present time. I've often flown over Bikini Lagoon, and on clear days when the water is quiet, you can still see the Saratoga setting there.
The area surrounding Shot Baker had become seriously radioactive and could not be safely approached for some time. This effect was not anticipated and ultimately led to a decision by President Truman to call off a third deep underwater test, codenamed Charlie.
This is the mile-high city of Los Alamos, the atomic city. This is a modern pueblo created by the people of the United States as a research and development center for atomic weapons. Since Eniwetok is a distant and primitive area, men have to leave their stateside laboratories and homes for a period running into months. Since 1943, when Los Alamos was established, men from this mesa have left the continental limits of the United States to test the weapons they have created.
2 years after Crossroads, authority was given by President Truman to proceed with Operation Sandstone. While the purpose of Crossroads had been to test the effects of atomic weapons, Sandstone's objective was to test new weapon designs. Planning for such weapons had begun many years earlier, when the scientists on Trinity had developed other experimental designs for atomic weapons, but were unsure of their success. A joint task force was created to head out once again to the Pacific and procure the islands of Eniwetok, some 200 miles west of Bikini, where Crossroads had been staged. In early November, the first construction crews arrived to strip the islands of vegetation, grade the land, and lay down tar and asphalt for roads. Within 6 months, construction crews erected temporary housing for the many scientists and military personnel required for Sandstone. Perched atop 200-foot steel towers, the 3 devices utilized on Sandstone employed new technology to double the explosive force of the bomb, using the same amount of plutonium spent over Nagasaki. This technology met Department of Defense requirements for more efficient bombs and increased the ability to stockpile nuclear weapons. Remote-controlled tanks, guided by helicopter, recovered fission samples near ground zero to measure the intense neutron and gamma radiation. Radiochemical analysis of the pulverized coral sand would yield secrets about the nuclear reaction and help in determining the efficiency of the new bomb designs. The results of sandstone affected the design of future nuclear weapons, rendering the Mark III production components of the Fat Man bomb obsolete. The Mark IV and Mark V designs brought improved performance and lighter weight to nuclear weapons. Los Alamos National Laboratory Z Division evolved into Sandia Base, located at Albuquerque, New Mexico's Kirtland Air Force Base. Sandia's primary purpose was to engineer and manufacture deliverable nuclear weapons designed by Los Alamos. In October of 1949, Western Electric entered into a contract with the Atomic Energy Commission on a no-profit, no-fee basis to form the Sandia Corporation, which assumed control of the base from Los Alamos. Sandia brought assembly line techniques and mass production to nuclear weapons to build the nation's stockpile of tactical and strategic bombs.
Upon his return from Bikini, in public addresses, in interviews, and in published articles, Admiral Blandy made recommendations of grave import regarding the atomic bomb.
It is essential that no country gain ascendancy over the United States in the development, manufacture, and tactical use of atomic weapons.
On August 29, 1949, the Russians detonated their first atomic bomb. This event, coming 5 years earlier than anyone in the West had predicted, was largely the result of one man, Klaus Fuchs. Fuchs, a Los Alamos physicist, had passed detailed blueprints of the original Trinity design to the Russians. With the emergence of the USSR as a nuclear rival in 1949, the United States believed it had strong motivation for intensifying its program of nuclear testing.
Quite expensive and a lot of logistics involved in carrying out an operation in the Pacific. So in January 1951, the United States opened up the Nevada Proving Grounds, which we now call the Nevada Test Site. You know, this is about 60 miles north of Las Vegas. To check out the weapons for Greenhouse, Operation Ranger was conducted, in which 5 new nuclear weapon types were airdropped at that new test site. With the confidence of those new weapons in hand, Operation Greenhouse proceeded in the spring of 1951. 4 shots were conducted on Greenhouse. One of the shots, shot easy, was a Department of Defense structural effects test. A 47 kiloton nuclear device on a tower was used, and it loaded many of the structures that had been developed for survivability in a nuclear weapon environment. A 4th test on Operation Greenhouse was the item test, about a 45.5 kiloton test in which tritium was burned in the very center of the nuclear explosion. And this process of putting tritium at the very center of the nuclear weapon is called boosting. And we kicked the yield up from about 20 kilotons to 45.5 kilotons, more than doubling it by that process. A very important feature in expanding the stockpile of nuclear weapons of the United States at that time. Another of the events on Greenhouse was the George event. Now, George is a large 225 kiloton weapon that was used to burn a deuterium capsule. And this is the first of our thermonuclear weapon experiments to ever be conducted.
Many people thought about it. We discussed it a lot. At the end of the war, most people wanted to stop. I did not. Because here was more knowledge. And in the coming uncertain period, with a dangerous man like Stalin around, and our incomplete knowledge, I felt that more knowledge is necessary. Among the people who knew a great deal about the hydrogen bomb, I was the only advocate of it. And that is, I think, my contribution. Not that I invented it. Others would have. And others in the Soviet Union did. But I was the one person who put knowledge and the availability of knowledge above everything else. And I must say, it appears that that appealed to Truman, and he made the right decision.
Welcome aboard the USS Estes. As you may or may not know, the Estes here is the command ship of Joint Task Force 132. We have minutes to go before the first blast, mic shot, of Operation Island. 59 minutes now, to be exact. We've been here since daybreak. Left Weetalk last night during the early morning hours. Now, as you can imagine, feeling is running pretty high about now, and there's reason for it. If everything goes according to plan, we'll soon see the largest explosion ever set off on the face of the Earth. The test islands for Mike are located at the top, or the northern sector, of Eniwetok Atoll, some 25 miles from Perry and Eniwetok, the two base islands of this atoll proving grounds.
3 islands making up the test site were linked together by causeways. These connecting roads were built to make it easy to get from island to island and to act as land platforms for some of the instrumentation. Situated on the Zero Island was the cab, or building, which housed the device. The Mike device was known as a wet bomb because it used liquid hydrogen isotopes to create the thermonuclear reaction. This made the device very large, weighing some 62 tons, and impractical to use as a deliverable weapon. A plywood tube ran from the Zero Island across the causeways to a detection station on the farthest island, a distance of nearly 2 miles. This tube was filled with helium, allowing lethal radioactive rays faster travel to the detection station before the island was consumed by the fireball.
You have a grandstand seat here to one of the most momentous events in the history of science. In less than a minute, you will see the most powerful explosion ever witnessed by human eyes. The blast will come out of the horizon just about there. And this is the significance of the moment. This is the first full-scale test of a hydrogen device. If the reaction goes, we're in the thermonuclear era. For the sake of all of us, and for the sake of our country, I know that you join me in wishing this expedition well.
It is now 30 seconds to zero time. Put on goggles or turn away. And remove goggles or face burst until 10 seconds after the first light.
Minus 15 seconds.